For the women that were experiencing education, they were receiving education. It was completely new to them. They didn't live in a world, in the Roman world or the Jewish world, where they were being educated. And so for them, it was a completely novel thing. And like with anything new, sometimes people can let it get out of hand for them. And so the early church had a disciplinary problem. Women were interrupting the service to ask questions. And Paul was saying, go home and ask the questions to your husbands. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that does not mean that women did not teach. So, in 1 Timothy 2:12, it said this, my apologies, that the other verse that is connected to this is in 1 Timothy 2:12, where it says, Paul says, but I do not allow a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man, but to remain silent. This is the passage that lots of modern people have objection to.
I wonder why.
Because they understand it in a totalitarian, absolutist way, because they observe it and interpret it in a way that contradicts the vision in the Bible. Why do we know this, ladies and gentlemen? We know this because, as we demonstrated earlier in 2 Timothy 1:15, one of the leaders of the church was taught the faith by his mother and his grandfather. The church is a body of people, it is not an institution, which means that women are actively teaching in the church.
15.
Secondly, women were allowed to be educated in the church, which was completely contradictory to the surrounding culture. That was something revolutionary, and I'll make some other points as we go forward.
It was transitional.
Right, ready?
Yeah. A transition.
So I asked for the answer to my question without quoting the Bible. He wasn't able to. So therefore I assume there isn't any logic or sense or...
We're talking about...
Mustn't interrupt.
But you interrupted me, Steve.
Right.
Now notice he's complaining. He interrupted me, but now he's complaining.
How long?
Bible is central
So
to
that's all he
Christianity.
could do. But then, having said he wasn't... Bob! So by first of all announcing no, he was going to use the Bible, he then went in to try and explain some logic to it. But all that logic that he tried to use was stuff that was applicable then, quite a long time ago, because the poor little women hadn't been educated for very long. That was a long time ago. What the hell's that got to do with roles today in the 21st century? Completely, utterly irrelevant. Utterly irrelevant. So why you spent at least half of your time talking about that historic context? Well, I'm sorry, another reason I'm an atheist is that I don't dwell in times 2,000 years ago. I try to dwell myself in the 21st century. And then again, he spent the last about 45 seconds going on about, again, examples of grandparents and grandchildren educating. That's not what we were talking about whatsoever. Why are you filling some of your 3 minutes by talking about something we're not talking about? We're talking about the difference of women and men's role in leading the congregation, leading the church, leading the prayer, and you talked about historical context that's irrelevant to today.
Steve, there's no problem there.
You failed to give any context that's based on logic or science or reality.
So well.
And then he went off and talked about grandparents and grandchildren, which we weren't talking about. So it kind of tells me you don't have an answer to the core point, that there is a core sexism within the religion of Christianity, except for some modern branches of Christianity who are a little bit more forward thinking and now let women take leading roles. To be honest, I didn't hear a thing you were saying because I was talking. So you'll have to telepathically pass it to Bob. Exactly. Well, being succinct isn't necessarily a problem. Waffling is a problem, particularly when you're waffling on points that weren't related to the point that was made, to the question that was being made.
What about the pioneers?
I will admit, there is more sexism in Islam, there is more sexism in a lot of Judaism than Christianity, but we cannot refute the fact that there is still more sexism in Christianity. He's not even listening to me. He's listening to the people that interrupt, that he gets so irate about when they interrupt him, but it's okay when they're on his side. Do you see the inconsistency? Do you see the inconsistency of this whole game?
Right.
No, you can't.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let me now demonstrate how Steve is going to be destroyed by the biblical evidence.
Why are you using such language?
It's a claim, that's right.
Who has heard of the fivefold ministry, brother? Who has heard of the fivefold
And you know that,
ministries?
right?
I don't know whether you're real or not.
Apostles,
are you trolling or not?
teachers, evangelists. Who has
Are you
heard
trolling?
of
Are
the
you
fivefold
serious?
ministries in Scripture? Thank you very much,
Are you
brother.
trolling? I'm not sure.
No.
Are you
In the
trolling?
book of Acts,
Are you
ladies
trolling?
and gentlemen.
Are you trolling?
In the book of, brother, I'm not sure.
No.
In the book of Acts, brother, it says this, and it shall be in the last days, God says, that I will pour forth of my spirit on all mankind, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, ladies and gentlemen.
But not by leading the
And
church.
what? How
Not
can
by
you
leading the
prophesy
congregation.
without speaking
We are
in the
the
church,
ones.
ladies
We
and
are the
gentlemen?
children.
Notice he's
We are the ones to
triggered
make
because
a
his
better
argument
world,
is
so let's
becoming
start
undone.
giving.
Steve consistently demonstrates
Spirit I
that
know
he
is
knows
Jack
debate.
Daniels.
Sister, you're not
gin.
helping right now.
Brandy.
Just ignore him.
Gin.
Just ignore
Great
him.
Holy Spirit coming
In Acts 13, ladies and gentlemen.
Acts?
In Acts 13, let me
Acts.
actually in Acts
Can't understand his
21:9.
northern accent, can you?
Listen to this. Now this man had 4 daughters who were prophetesses in Acts 2:19. How can you be a prophetess in the church and not speak? How can you be a prophetess in the church and not talk?
When did I claim the church doesn't allow women
So
to speak?
Steve,
I didn't claim that, did I?
Steve
I claim they can't lead
doesn't
the prayer.
understand, ladies and gentlemen,
Not that
that the
not that they have
church
to be mute,
that the
but they can't
church
lead
does
the
allow
congregation.
women
Right.
to have leading roles. Let me give you an example, ladies and
How many? Just
gentlemen,
one.
of those who were evangelists in the church. Who was the first person to preach the gospel?
Cartoon?
Mary the apostle. Who did she was? An apostle was sent to Peter and the other apostles to preach the resurrection. So women can teach, this sister here can teach this heretic here the truth of the Christian faith, as she has pointed out. So women can teach, women can lead, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen,
Right. You know what I'm saying?
in Philippians chapter 2, 22,
He's my husband. I don't need his permission to do that's in there.
we have seen, ladies and gentlemen, example. You're not helping, sister. Stop engaging, brother. You're not helping. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen in scriptural examples women teaching and leading.
Time.
All right. Does someone else want a time in 3 minutes? 3 minutes.
I really don't think on that specific subject there's anything more to say though, is there?
Right, 3 minutes. Go one more.
It's
Start his time.
winning and losing. What's all this?
That's childish.
Steve is going to run away
It's
soon.
not a battle. It's not
Steve
a
is going to
war.
run away.
We're having a discussion.
Right.
All this winning and losing.
They're just in their natural inferior place, as according to Scripture.
And which is why religion and
Brother,
Christianity
if you
is
want to
dying.
tag in, he can tag out and I'll debate you.
You see, this
That's
is
what Christian
this is
was.
why
I have
religion.
not taught, I
This
have
is
not
why
taught
religion
anything
is
you're
dying.
saying.
Oh,
This is why religion is dying. The arrogance of it.
Right, right.
It's the
All
inappropriateness of it.
There is
How
indeed
it
3 minutes.
goes against the grain of so much of
It's 3 minutes.
what we all live by these days. That, you know, for example, I work in HR.
Right.
You know, I have quite a good idea about discrimination legislation and equality legislation. And in there are some areas. There are some areas. It's called genuine occupational requirements. what is the point? What is the point?
There
There is no point, is there? There is no point. There are some areas in the law where there's a genuine occupational requirement. For example, personal care. If you're a care assistant and you're giving personal care to old ladies in a care home, you can be a woman. There is no genuine occupational requirement
We don't have to
for only men to lead the church. He keeps us taking us off on tangent after tangent after tangent when all we're talking about is leading the church, leading the congregation, leading the prayer. There is no reason whatsoever that a woman can do that, whether it's in a church, whether it's in a synagogue, or whether it's in a mosque. But even here, there are one or two very exceptional mosques these days that allow women to lead the prayer. You know, they're much more in the minority than with churches, but at least the church is getting there. It knows that we can't downtrod women anymore, saying you can't do that, you can't do this. Absolutely, absolutely. But of course, won't that create an interesting situation when a trans individual wants to lead Bob's church? Well, you know, what's going to happen then? You know, is it going to be sex or is it going to be gender? I mean, I think Bob might come out on a sensible answer on that, to be frank.
Society in which men own women as their rightful property.
Obviously not. That's obviously not. That would be very backward, wouldn't it? I mean, you're talking about slavery in a way, aren't you? Men owning women, and you are trolling, aren't you? You've just proved my point that you are trolling. Men have no domain over women. A man has no domain over a woman. That would be an interesting question for Bob to come back on. Do men have any domain, any control, any role over a woman?
Time. Right.
Now, please answer that question.
Right,
please.
ladies and gentlemen.
I'll start praying.
Now,
Please
ladies
answer
and
that
notice
question.
Steve consistently tries to interrupt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Steve wants to argue about Christianity's misogyny, but he doesn't want to take into account what the Bible says. Let me give another example. I give an example of women prophetesses from the Bible. Now let me give you an example of a woman deaconess. In Romans 16 verses 1 and 2 it says, I commend to you our sister, everybody say sister, Phoebe, who is a servant of the church, is at Cenchrea, that you receive her in the Lord in a manner worthy of the saints, and that you help her in whatever matter she may have need of you. In other words, Phoebe says to the men of the church, can you help me with this? And the men have to help Phoebe in her projects, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, Steve's argument is totally busted. Biblically busted. Now, ladies and gentlemen, notice he's heckling because he's losing the argument, ladies and gentlemen. And this is how Steve always behaves when he loses the argument. Now, because of this paradigm, ladies and gentlemen, women in the church received education. Women in the church were celebrated as examples of faith and as saints for men and women to emulate. Women became the leaders of convents. They became scholars. They became educated. They were taught how to read, and they taught others how to read. And, ladies and gentlemen, there are examples in history where saintly women told popes what to do, but he doesn't know that. The Avignon papacy came to an end because of the command of an abbotess who was considered a prophetess in the church, and she told the popes to return to Rome, and so the popes did. But he doesn't know that because he doesn't know the history of the church and because he doesn't know the Bible. Women became queens, secular rulers at the highest point, because of Christian teaching that allowed them to do so, ladies and gentlemen. These rights were lost because of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and we'll come on to his trans ideology in a second.
Right, this is my last intervention.
It's going to run away now.
No, grow up.
It's going to run away now.
For two reasons. A, I've got to go somewhere.
Oh,
You know where you're going eventually.
excuses.
Second reason this is my last adventure, because he never responds to the specific points I raise. He just goes off on rambling tangents. Never, you're the clock timer. You can't contribute.
But he has, though.
He never responds to
This is the Holy Spirit right here.
the specific points.
And you did that.
My last specific point was: does he think, in any way, shape, or form, men have domain over women? Did he even mention anything in relation to that question? No, he didn't. Just went off rambling again, pretty much saying what he said before, was quoting stuff from the Bible. Does the Bible believe? Does your faith believe? Do you believe men have any domain, any power, any control over women? Is there a hierarchy?
Should a husband have domain over his wife?
When it comes to power, control, responsibility, does a man have anything
man
over a
have
woman?
domain
Because
over his
I
wife?
feel they don't.
That happens though.
I feel
The woman
we are
thinks,
equal.
oh, okay,
I
you know what I mean?
feel
Okay.
in a true loving relationship, it should be an absolute relationship of equality, where one has no more power or control over another. And we all know personalities are different. In reality, yeah, there are power imbalances frequently in religions, but it shouldn't be led by our gender. It doesn't have to be led by what's between our legs,
But does that mean
or
we
whether
don't
we're
have
XY or
identity
XX.
You don't know what your identity is, that's why.
We are
No,
different. not
I
equal.
you're
have an
talking about
I have an
identity.
identity through Jesus
You sound
Christ.
like a trans.
Jesus
You
Christ.
sound like a trans
Jesus
rights
Christ
obsessive.
is my
She's telling me
identity.
I don't
You
understand
know
my
what you
identity.
believe. That's
I
not
don't
a problem.
identify as anything because I'm not a trans rights numpty.
Well, if you come
You
to
don't
Christ,
identify,
if you come to
you
Christ,
are.
If you come to
I
Christ,
don't have
your
pronouns.
identity become clear.
I am a
I'm
male.
submissive-
I don't
I'm
identify
I'm
as a male.
submissive woman
I
that
am
has
a
to submit to
male.
his wife, to
Okay,
her
that's
husband,
interesting,
that's
isn't
it.
it?
Holy
That
Spirit.
the religious person on Bob's side is starting to talk about identity politics.
Steve, you made
What
your
we
question.
what we
Leave it.
identify as.
Really well.
So, in relationships, should it be automatic that the man has some dominance over a woman? I believe
Is there a
absolutely not.
hierarchy or not?
And I'll give you an extra 38 seconds to answer that point.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just talk about what modernity that Steve submits to has done for women. The trans ideology that Steve supports,
This is what about
that Steve supports, has annihilated the very idea of womanhood. According to modern trans ideologists,
Which she
of
brought
which
up.
Steve is one, women
Not
no
actually.
longer
Why are
exist
you now lying?
as
Why are
an
you now lying about
objective
it?
reality, ladies and gentlemen. They have had their rights taken away from them. Their women's sanctuaries taken away from
This
them.
is absolute
Their
lies and
women's
bollocks, and he
spaces
knows it's lies
taken
and
away
bollocks,
from them.
'cause he knows I
ladies
very
and gentlemen.
loudly stand up
Notice
against the
how
trans
he
rights
is
movement
triggered.
and for
Notice
the
how he
women's
is
speak
triggered.
movement, because you're lying.
However,
Because you're telling
ladies
the
and
audience
gentlemen,
a blatant
however,
lie.
ladies and
You're telling
gentlemen,
the audience a blatant
he has
lie,
lied
Bob.
about the Christian faith. I wanna
I thought you were
ask,
better
brother.
than this,
I
Bob.
wanna ask
I
a
thought you were
question.
better than this, Bob.
He asked a
Just
question
put out a
about
blatant lie.
men's dominion over women and women's dominion over men.
At last, he gets to the
Here's
question.
what the Bible teaches. It says that a man has rights over the woman's body, and the woman has rights over the man's body. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? It says
that mean?
in Scripture that we should submit to one another. It was a command given to both men and women. Now, ladies and gentlemen,
But not in the formal
within
church.
the
But
Christian
not in the formal
faith,
church.
we established inequality between men and women. However, ladies and gentlemen, equality does not destroy distinction. Remember, the scriptures say that there is neither men nor women in Jesus Christ. That is talking about the equality between men and women. However, men and women do have differences of temperament and nature. Don't mishear my words. This is not an argument For the place of the woman is in the home. That is an ahistorical, unchristian, modern Enlightenment perspective, not a Christian one. The place of men and women is on how and where they can best serve one another in the Lord according to their skills, temperaments and nature. And within that, ladies and gentlemen, all of the women's rights of the Western world have been built. They were not built by the Enlightenment, they were oppressed by the Enlightenment.
Tell the women of Dagenham, Matt. I don't think.
Do you want to go again?
Short. Let's do it shorter way. I don't think the women of Dagenham, who were very much at the forefront of fighting for women's rights in the workplace, would agree with you that it was Christianity or the church that gave them the equality in the workplace. No, it wasn't. That was trade unionism. That was collective. That was collective people coming together.
Underlying morality was there. Christian.
Well, you say the underlying morality was there, but it was not the church that campaigned to give them the rights.
Where's your underlying morality?
Well, that's completely changing the subject. It was not the church.
Where is the idea? Where does equality come from?
It was not the body of the church
Where's
that
that
gave
value come
women
from, Steve?
employment rights in
Where's
the 1970s.
that value of men and women's equality coming from? Where's it coming from?
Evolution.
No.
Evolution. Does evolution support equality of dignity?
This is a lie.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen,
evolution's a lie, Bob. No, you don't, do you?
the value of equality, ladies and gentlemen, comes from a Christian paradigm. The very idea of a value system requires metaphysical beliefs, something that his secular humanism can't give you or rationalize. You need metaphysical beliefs to have values. Without metaphysical beliefs, you don't have values, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll do. No, we said we're going to do it shorter.
30 or minute?
1.5. 1.5.
You also needed to
Right.
punish
1.5.
people for
Okay, we'll do 1 minute,
So
1
again,
minute 30.
the arrogance of religious preachers, particularly at Speaker's Corner. You need what was the word you used? Metaphysics.
Metaphysical beliefs.
You need metaphysical beliefs.
What's a metaphysical
to
belief,
basically
Steve?
know what's right or wrong.
What's a metaphysical
It's a religious,
belief?
spiritual belief, isn't it?
No, you don't understand a
Well,
metaphysical
give me
belief.
a quick definition. Then.
Right, ladies and gentlemen,
Quick, like that's going to be possible.
this is why Steve is out of
don't
his
say the
depth.
sea again.
Because he
no.
doesn't understand what a metaphysical
You don't
belief
have to
is.
agree, Andy.
A metaphysical belief, ladies and gentlemen, is a belief in a reality that is non-material.
Yes! Spiritual, religious, invisible. Things
That's how you're
things that go
terming it,
bump in the
fine, we're
night.
talking about
the
the
monster
same thing.
under the bed, the monster behind the curtain. I know exactly what you mean.
The idea
So
of
I will-
right and
so
wrong,
I will continue.
the idea
I will-
of equality,
I will continue.
the idea of dignity,
Be quiet.
the idea
Be quiet,
of
this is my
value.
turn.
You're interrupting me consistently.
The arrogance of the religious. That if you're non-religious, you have no right or no claim or no base for any morality, basically.
mean you've got in there,
so
then you have it.
the entire non-religious world, of which there are billions of people, have no right for any morality, no basis for any morality, no existence of morality. It's just arrogance.
That's assertion.
Utter
Where's his proof?
arrogance.
It's just ad hominem.
So you say,
It's just ad
how many
hominem.
billions of people have
It's
lived
just
in
ad
China?
hominem.
How many billions of people have lived in China over the centuries?
you live in
And you're saying they don't have any morality? Really? So families, mothers, fathers, children, aunts, nephews, nieces, they have no morality. That's the Chinese State Communist Party. That is not the entire populace of the country of China. This arrogance that only us religious folk and only the ones that have got the right religion have morality and know what it's about and know what's right and wrong and you fools, you know, how dare you even say whether it's something right or wrong because you have nothing to base it on. Arrogant nonsense that's based on no logic whatsoever.
Are you done?
I really do have to go.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
I've got a call at 12
ladies
o'clock.
and gentlemen, the reality is, Steve has just made assertions. However, this whole argument about women's equality is predicated on an assumed value system. that assumed value system of women's dignity and women's value. That is what this whole argument is scaffolded on. But that very argument would have been impossible in pagan Rome. It would have been impossible in Saudi Arabia. It would have been impossible in rabbinic Judaism. The only reason, ladies and gentlemen, the only reason, ladies and gentlemen, why we are even able to have this debate is because Christianity elevated the position of women. It gave women rights. It encouraged women's education. It allowed women to be leaders of the church, and it allowed women to be leaders of secular society. These are all facts that contradict Steve's thesis.
They're not.
And what drives Steve's thesis is a combination of ignorance, arrogance, and prejudice against the Christian church. He made assertions about the Bible that we disproved. He made assertions about history that we disproved.
You've made assertions about paganism.
Our late Queen Elizabeth the Great was anointed as a Christian queen, ladies and gentlemen. She was named after another great Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth I.
What if she'd had an older brother?
Who was also anointed as Queen of England by the church, ladies and gentlemen.
Our queen and forgets for one moment if she'd had an older brother, she would have never been queen.
The thesis that Steve is making, ladies and gentlemen. All Steve can do is rail against facts.
Point out the odd fact. Point out the odd fact. That if Elizabeth had an older brother, she would have never set foot on the throne. Or set cheek on the throne.
Let's be clear what liberal secular humanism has given to women. At the rise of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment,
you don't even want a woman to take a pill,
which
do you?
was
you don't even like the pill, do you?
Was rejected, which rejected Christianity. Women's rights were taken away.
Which ones?
All of them.
Which ones?
All of them. Women were forced into the home, and only in the home, because of the Enlightenment and rationalism.
It was the church that unleashed them from the kitchen sink. Are you actually saying
Christianity never put them there. No, it is a shame, ladies and gentlemen, that Steve is not able to conduct himself in an actual debate. Would you like to do question for question?
No, I keep telling you I need to go.
Right, we'll just shout over one another then until you leave.
Okay, let's do that.
Right, ladies and gentlemen.
1 minute, that would be better.
Shall we do minute for minute? Shall we do minute for minute?
You can.
And do you think you could conduct yourself where I speak for a minute without you interrupting? The evidence will show that you interrupted. Do you want to come and do 1 minute for 1 minute? Could someone time us 1 minute for 1 minute?
We're going round in circles, but if we must.
I'll go first.
Oh!
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear.
Paper, scissors, a Christian.
I am not arguing for some kind of characterization of Christianity that says that Christianity is not patriarchal. It is.
Well, if you said that half an hour ago, we could have saved all this time.
Now notice he's interrupting, so this whole minute for minute has just dissolved, sadly.
He did say that.
So I'm going to
Why
interrupt
did you say that half an hour ago?
Steve, I'm just going to interrupt you.
Wow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you ended it. You said, can you?
Exactly. I'm not arguing.
So thank you for admitting on camera that you couldn't conduct yourself properly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, patriarchy, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't necessarily mean the oppression of women. It can do, and it has, but it doesn't always mean that it does. Christians believe in patriarchy.
Sometimes we can be nice,
but we believe in equality and dignity equality of women in a way that is cohesive to family, society and culture. And that is what Christianity cultivates. That is what Christianity teaches. And when Christians have been at their best, that is what Christianity has produced, just like it did in Christendom, just like it did in the Crusader states. And it was suppressed of doing a pilgrimage march. That pilgrimage march was in imitation. Was in imitation.
Is a Christian
it was
no one
in
imitation
of Christians that marched against Richard II, that led to the Magna Carta. That's who they were emulating on that march.
Where does the Bible tell us to
But
march?
he didn't hear that. He
talking
didn't hear
bull,
that,
isn't it?
and he didn't understand that.
Not going to go there.
I'll just point out again, the march that he talked about was in direct imitation of the march against Richard II that led to the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta was what established rights like habeas corpus, the right to a trial by a jury of your peers. The granted, ladies, are you going?
I am there.
All right, you look after yourselves.
And you.
God bless you. Steve, I want to give you a gift.
As long as it's not a Bible.
It won't be a Bible.
Is it alcohol?
No, it's not an alcohol.
Where did you buy this bag?
It was given to me as a gift. I wouldn't have chosen it myself. Is it a small kid? You can carry this, it's not that big.
It's going to be a leaflet.
There you go. Alright. You look after yourself. See, we don't hit